What's up, guys? Supermoto here. How you guys doing today? Today I'm going to bring you a first ride on this brand new 2024 Suzuki DRZ 400 Supermoto. I know it's not nearly as cool, but you know, I got some new gloves too. Can't go to the dealership without buying something here or there. I'm helping a friend of mine who just bought this bike, getting into motorcycles for the first time, and I stalled it. He asked me to ride this bike back home for him. So guys, if you guys don't know, the Supermoto designation of this motorcycle means that it has upgraded forks and suspension, as well as it's on street tires instead of knobbies. But anyway, it's a pretty amazing motorcycle. If you guys don't know anything about Supermotos, this is generally probably the bread and butter Supermoto that everybody mentions and talks about when you're talking about Supermotos. There's the DRZ 400, and then everything else is just pretty much a copycat. The DRZ 400 has been around since the early 2000s. It's pretty much the quintessential Supermoto that there is. Everybody turns the DRZ 400 into a Supermoto, and they just decided, hey, we're just gonna go and do our own thing and actually make this bike a real Supermoto, and that's why we're here. There's other bikes in this category now. There used to be the WR250, WR250X. Now it's really just this bike, and then everything else is a high dollar version of this, from the KTMs to the Ducatis. Honestly, I would probably take one of these over one of those any day, mainly because this thing is tried and true, man. This thing's like a tractor. Never gonna kill this thing. The aftermarket availability on a bike like this is stupid good. Any parts or accessories that you could ever possibly want will be available for this bike, including aftermarket plastics and all sorts of other things. If you don't know what exactly you want to do with a motorcycle, but you know that you want a dual sport of some type, this would be a great motorcycle to start with. I've seen these bikes go cross country, crazy trips in other places, other parts of the world, been everywhere. They're tried and true. These are just a fantastic bike. Everybody that I know of that buys one of these loves them. A lot of people talk about this bike in the same manner they talk about their first bicycle as a kid. Like, it's just, you kind of have to be trying to not have fun on a bike like this. Other bikes in this general category, especially other bikes that my friend here was looking at, was going to be the KLR 650, KLXs, and you know, also all the high dollar ones, all the high dollar Supermotos like the KTMs and the Duke. Like I said, this bike versus the KLR, I mean, honestly, I just don't really see purpose to get a KLR in this day and age, because honestly, like, this bike here has got roughly the same horsepower, roughly the same torque, and is way lighter, and you'll have way more fun. This makes the best beginner bike. I've long said that a dual sport makes the absolute best beginner motorcycle, because you can put some crash protection on this stuff, and literally you can drop it every single day and it'll never break. It'll always be fine. You'll always be having fun. It sits a little bit higher, so you gotta get used to maybe tiptoeing a little bit. But other than that, there's really not a whole lot that can really get you in trouble on these bikes. They got about 30 or so horsepower, about 30 or so foot-pounds of torque, I believe, as well. That single-cylinder thumper motor, you know, it's just going to be like a tractor motor. Fast, reliable. You won't have to work on this bike, because if you're working on a bike, you're not having fun. What beginner wants to, like, be working on a bike all the time? Like, if you go and you bought a used motorcycle, you're just gonna be working on it all the time. And that's not really what motorcycling should really be about. But you go buy a bike like this, it always starts up every time. It'll start up on the first try every time, and it's just good. It's just good all around. Besides for being a fantastic beginner bike, this is also an amazing second bike. I might not want to have one of these bikes as my primary everyday motorcycle, but having one of these things in like a stable of motorcycles where you can have like a, you know, like a MT-07 like I have, or one of these, that adds just a plethora of options. If you just feel like being a hooligan one day, you can just jump on your 400 Supermoto and go do wheelies everywhere. Or, you know, you feel like maybe I want to hit a dirt track one day, maybe I want to explore a trail somewhere, you know, you can do trails on street tires. I've done it on a WR250. You can just throw knobbies on this thing in like under 20 minutes and you're good to go. Trans-America Trail, here you come. Just plush suspension on this thing. It's just like, this thing's like riding on a lazy boy right now. Not terribly uncomfortable seat. You know, that's one thing that most manufacturers kind of cheap out on, is just the seat being uncomfortable. You know, this bike, pretty good. Pretty good. I could see this being a good bike for like a daily rider, like a full-on daily rider, full-on upright, like no lean at all. You can just sit here all day long. Might need like a front peg. Here, just do one of these. Sometimes you just want to kick up, you know, relax a little bit. Make sure they're paying attention. I got a little PTSD. It picks up pretty okay. 5th gear right now, so we're on the top of the rev range. That's the one thing about this bike that is like probably the main detractor, is that there's only 5 gears for some reason. But it seems to do pretty all right. It's still in braking and it's not mine, but it's picking up pretty good. Just went from 50 to 60 miles an hour without much of a problem. You do got to twist the whole throttle, but it does give it to you. It does give it to you eventually. A total of 6 miles on the Odo, so we're not going to go crazy or anything. Clutch feels good. The transmission feels nice and positive. It's not mushy. It does need an exhaust. I think it needs an exhaust big time. Let's see how this does accelerating. That's not bad. That's not bad for a single cylinder with like 30 or so horsepower. That's plenty, dude. It's got that flourish, that single cylinder flourish where it's just like, blah. I'm a little spoiled with my my CP2 engine. I love my CP2. It's just, it sounds so good. This one's very quiet, but you know, that's a thing that happens. That's completely expected. That's doing pretty good. That's 68. That's 68 and definitely a 60-mile-an-hour zone. I know that. Kind of feels a little bit like a sport bike where you kind of got to rev it up a little bit. You got to rev it up. You got to give it a little bit of juice. A little bit. You got to give it a little bit of juice before it gives you some horsepower. You don't get a Supermoto to go super fast. You get a Supermoto to have super fun. I will say my 5'9" on a good day ass has got his legs completely extended and I'm not touching the ground. Get out of the way, move. I can definitely deal with this. When my buddy was sitting there, like it was KLR 650 or DRZ 400, and I didn't want to outright tell him what kind of motorcycle to buy, but man, I'm glad he picked this one. God damn. Everybody that I know that gets a KLR regrets it in like 6 months. They're just like this bike that just, it's okay. It's just okay. It's not good at literally anything. This bike is really good at fun. If this was my bike, I'd be in here messing around, finding a single track trail into the woods. But that's just me. I make bad decisions. Okay. Was I not in first? I wasn't in first. That's why that takeoff was a little rough. I'm not in first gear. So that was a 2nd gear takeoff and it still did fine. That a little bit of a mess up or a little bit of a non-standard start there shows how forgiving this motorcycle is. It's just got you. It's just a good little beginner bike, a good little fun secondary bike. Oh man, I am really trying not to be a hooligan here. Something that can be understated about a beginner bike. When you make a minor mistake like that, you don't have a gear indicator, so you're just like, you're kind of feeling out where the gears are and stuff, and you accidentally start in 2nd, not a huge deal. Some bikes, it might be a huge deal, but for this one, not at all. I was testing out how the rear brakes felt a little bit. Feels a little squishy. That's something that happens with these rubber fuel lines, which my MT-07 also has. They're a little bit cheaper, and what happens with them is when you push down, the line itself expands a little bit, and that means that the pressure goes to expanding the line and not to the brake pedal itself. So it feels a little mushy in the brakes in the rear. Not the biggest deal because most of your brake power happens up front. So initial impressions so far, a little bit older technology. It feels like I'm riding a slightly older motorcycle, but it is generally handling very well. It feels like a little bit older technology. It's the DRZ for you. It is older technology, but older technology means cheaper to fix. It means cheaper for parts. It means easier to fix. And you know, there's always positives and negatives to that. Throttle isn't quite my MT-07, but my MT-07 is also a twitchy throttle with 300 more cc's than this. I also have a little bit of illusion of power with the MT-07 because it is so twitchy. This bike is something that I can definitely deal with. The 30 horsepower feels pretty good. It feels pretty good for a bike like this that's stupid light. The thing is, you don't need 100 horsepower on a bike like this because it would probably be not fun to ride because it'd be dangerous. These bikes that'll give you a little bit of the goose, but also be safe and not put you in bad spots immediately, they're fun. They're fun bikes. Super light, very beginner friendly in the lightness. I'm about 5'9". I can't, like, my legs are fully extended here, as you can see. Legs fully extended, not touching the ground one bit. My friend is over 6 foot, he won't have that problem. So if you're a real short rider, it might be something to take into consideration, and you might want to do some lowering links. Either that or just be comfortable just leading the bike a little bit to the side and then putting the foot down that way. But I mean, there's a lot of room for activities with this thing. The thing is about dual sports and adventure bikes, this right here, when you compare it to the other dual sports in this category, WR250 isn't made anymore. You have very expensive KTMs, you have very expensive Ducatis, you have other various more expensive, less reliable motorcycles. It does everything that you want it to do or that you would do with those bikes, it does it at a fraction of the cost. The dual sport bike, they're taking in a lot of consideration for people that want to do it street riding and people that want to do trail riding. So you're never going to get the best of any world, but you're going to get a bike that could do everything for you. If you combine that with also, if you take that into consideration, you go like, hey, I just want a bike that's comfortable, fun for around the town riding, I can be a little bit of a hooligan on it, and you're not like, I just want to do pow-pows everywhere. This would be a bike for you. You need to temper your expectations a little bit, but this thing's probably going to exceed them either way. It's doing very good. Even having 5 gears, we're accelerating just fine. 66 miles an hour, 5-gear motorcycle. It feels like it stay here all day long. I mean, what else do you need? What else do you need here, dude? It's just a good bike. Who would this bike be good for? Anybody that wants to be a hooligan, anybody that wants a second bike that's just for fun. So that you may need, if you buy a DRZ 400, parts that you may need off the rip are probably going to be a new seat of some type. They always come a little bit uncomfortable. This one isn't terrible. I've only been riding for 14 miles though. Might need an exhaust. This kind of bike, there's exhaust all over the place. You could probably buy an exhaust on Amazon for this thing for under fucking 250 bucks, to be honest with you. You know, without much of a problem. That, and then maybe just a tail tidy, because a tail tidy is always good on a bike. Oh man, it accelerates good, dude. That wasn't even 5th gear. You can make this work for you. 100% guarantee that you'll be able to make this work for you. Dirt cheap for a bike nowadays, even though all bikes are kind of overpriced. Dirt cheap for a bike, dirt cheap to, you know, insure. So if you're kind of high risk, this would be a really good bike for you. If you're kind of a high risk guy that, you know, maybe doesn't get great rates for sport bikes, but you still want to have fun in a little bit different way. Ooh, a little bit of sand, a little bit of sand. Don't dump somebody's brand new bike. Anyway guys, that's it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys on the next one. Deuces.